Oh hey viewers, so we're going back to round 6 of the Manufacturers Championship for the 2020 FIA season. Again, this is back when I was around 37,000 DR, so it's kind of a low A lobby as we have a seamless transition to the qualifier because not much happened for warm-up. But yeah, so I signed for Porsche, so I'm driving the 911 RSR. This is the first race I have my custom livery in, and because I'm in the 911 RSR, and this is Sarth, which is a very power-oriented circuit, I didn't hit the gas immediately because I wanted to get some slipstream so I would stand a chance at qualifying. But little did I know that this was going to turn into complete chaos as we head on to the Mulsanne Straight. Everyone decides that they want to slow down and let people go ahead of them, even though this is still the OUTLAP, and we have like, what, 3.5 minutes left of race time left on this lap, so that was almost a disaster as I almost go into the back of some people. So we're going to cut ahead to my final qualifying lap, which was also kind of disastrous as people weren't spaced out enough, spacing didn't work, and it just turned into a lot of fighting. So I wasn't on track to get a very good lap, but I figured, hey, I haven't gotten a penalty yet, so I'll get a good lap, as I'm right on the rear of this Porsche here, and we got this group of 3 heading to the final chicane. So I brake early, take my time, and the Porsche ahead loses the control, and I just go right into the back of them, and I gave myself a penalty right at the finish line. So, that wasn't very ideal, because with the penalty, that means that I didn't get qualifying time in. So even though I crossed the line in 5th, as the music stops, as you can see here, people cross the line, I start going down the order, and at the very end I qualify in 16th. So not the best results for qualifying that I could have gotten. But we skip to the race. As you can see there, the French Air Force, l'Armée de l'Air, didn't screw up their smoke like they did on that one Bastille day with the flag being the wrong color. And crossing the finish line, we have one guy turned around. I almost spin myself out. The Porsche, hey, gets a bad run. That's one of the drawbacks of starting so far back. You have to go through some of these chicanes on these tracks that have final chicanes on them. So into the first corner, we got the Porsche still beside me, but he backs out. I brake nice and early, get a little tap from the rear, but no harm, no foul. We continue on, just minding the track limits. So we're going to go ahead and jump ahead here because not much happened that lap, and we're heading into the end of the back straight into the Porsche curves, the Corvette curves, and so there's a group ahead. They were fighting. I was hoping they'd kill each other, and sure enough, I gained a spot. But then this Viper just, I guess they were trying to be sportsmanlike and stop for the Audi that they murdered off into the sand, but for some reason they just pulled back onto the track and just stopped. So I had no choice but to rear end him, and got a penalty for that. And then the race, not much really happened. I managed to get back up to 9th as some people pitted and people made mistakes and got penalties. I tried to keep them clean, but going up to 8th actually, as the leader gets a 1-minute penalty for the tires. So this was a racing hard required race. But anyways, you can see their final results. I finished 8th, and I was not satisfied with that. I knew I could do a lot better, so I decided to go again for the next round. As you can see there, I am door 10 this time on this round, and it's a 177 point race because again, this is a little earlier on in my FIA career. But anyways, we're going to have another seamless transition to qualifying, and I decided, you know what, after the disaster of last qualifying, I'm just going to be the first one out, so I mashed my foot on the gas and hopefully I'm out. And luckily, not only am I the first person out, but the people behind me are actually kind of far behind. And as we skip forward here to show the Mulsanne Straight, you can see that the people are actually pretty far behind me, so they won't have my draft, which is good, so I'm not helping them along. And also, I don't need to worry about, someone catching up to me and pressuring my race. So I come around, finish my qualifying lap. As you see, it's clean. Not the best lap. In free practice, I could get under 4 minutes. That's with the tire we're on, but I made a couple of mistakes on this lap, and I just get a barely above 4-minute time. And as qualifying finishes, you can see there that was good enough for 6th place. Considering that I didn't have a draft and I'm not in a power car, I think that's a pretty good result because, as you can see from there, the previous qualifying, people were just fighting way too much. So, we're going to jump straight into the second race. I jumped to this point because my PS share settings were only set to 30 minutes, so it kind of cut out the very beginning, not that much happened. But as you can see here, I'm on the back of the Supra, and I just could not get this first chicane complex, or I guess the second one, because it's after the lap chicane, but I couldn't get that corner right for maybe the first half of the race, so I lose some time out to the Supra. And I'm still within slipstream range, because this is back when slipstream was 1.5 seconds, but didn't get the best of exits, and got a Supra behind me as well. As you can see, they're closing in pretty quickly, so it's 3/10 and it's just going down by about 200ths every half a second or so. And so they decide to pass me, and nothing I can really do there. I don't have the straight line speed to fight against that. So I go ahead and just let them by. No need to, well, I was going to let them by, but they brake a lot earlier, so I go late. I end up going a little too deep on the brakes, but they get by anyway. So we continue on, not much drama. So we're going to skip here to the end of lap 1, because not much happened after the rest of that. It was just me behind this group. As you can see here, the top 6 are all bunched together now, and as we're coming to this final chicane complex, the FT1 concept in front gets a bit of wheel spin, and the Supra ahead gets a little slow, and I just barely managed to pull into that gap that they made between their cars, and I jumped 2 places into 5th. Supra is on my outside, but I have the inside for this corner, so I just lift off, stay to the inside, and luckily the Supra backs off, and we go through the chicane pretty nicely. And this track was just terrible with track limits. Like, it was pretty bad. If you would just put a wheel or 2 off the wrong way, you get the penalty. But anyways, coming to my least favorite corner at this time, I completely mess it up and actually end up into the grass, so I lose a lot of time to the group ahead, and furthermore, the group behind is now on my tail. So the FT1 passes me. They get a half-second penalty. I don't know what that was for, because it didn't look like they made contact with me. And, you know, typically the person, if someone gets dive bombed, how the penalty system works, the non-dive bomber, the victim, gets punished. But we continue on, and the Supra behind me decides to work with me this time, and they start bump drafting me. And thanks to that little bump draft, I'm catching up to the FT1 ahead. And knowing that they have a penalty, I know I'll go ahead into 5th. So I hit my braking point pretty well. The braking point's ahead, and you can see there on the radar, the Supra behind me actually gets a little punt. But yeah, my braking points I felt were pretty good for the Mulsanne Straight and the chicanes on there. But anyways, we're going to skip ahead now, because not much happened after I passed them. But you can see there's a group behind me, so I need to stay vigilant, but I'm speeding ahead. So anyways, yeah. We skip ahead to Indianapolis, and so as you can see how I don't have the straight line speed. The FT1 easily catches up to me, passes me, I let them go. I see on the radar that this person here is behind, so I leave space, and they just go complete full send up the inside, but they get a really bad exit, which compromises my exit, so I'm beginning to lose time to the FT1 ahead, and Supra behind's catching up again. But they have a penalty, so just need to be patient, don't do anything stupid, don't get too aggravated, and just pass them as they go through, or as they go south and I go through them. So, going to skip ahead again to lap 3, beginning the Mulsanne Straight. Again, the Supra behind me is working with me, they're bump drafting me. And as you can see there, the FT1 ahead, again, has a penalty, and the people ahead actually have penalties as well, because normally on most tracks, you can put 2 wheels, as long as you have 2 wheels on the curb, you're good, but on some of these corners, like, putting 2 wheels beyond the curbs is a track limits penalty, so that's why you can see here I'm being pretty conservative with how I'm taking this corner, because I don't want to extend them too much and risk getting the penalties. But anyway, so we're past the FT1, we're in 5th place, we're on the Mulsanne Straight, and the Mustang ahead that had the penalty had slowed down quite a bit, so I am now actually in the slipstream range. You can see there the gap is now under a second. And owing to the 911's cornering abilities, I'm able to close that gap up by another 10th through this chicane. So I'm pretty happy about this, because as the cornering car, I really want someone in front of me the entire time, so that way I have someone to slipstream off of and not be completely defenseless on the straight. Another good thing too is that because the Porsche is good on gas, I can rev the car out completely. Some cars like the Mustang ahead actually need a little fuel saving, but I don't. But as you can see here, coming into this tight hairpin, I am now right on the back of the Mustang. So you can see that there's kind of this dynamic between cornering and straight line speed, because now the Mustang is pulling away from me, even though I'm in their draft. But I want to work with this Mustang because it's only lap 3. We're only 5 seconds behind the leaders. The top 4 are right there. So there's no point in fighting, making us lose time. You can see that they're pulling off. They start pulling off and not defending, because I guess they're expecting me to go for the move. But I decide, you know what, no, let's bump draft. Let's start working together, since at this time the penalty system allowed you to bump draft and wouldn't give you an SR down and a penalty. But anyways, we head into the corner, and at this point it's just trying to stay within their draft. So we're going to go ahead and skip ahead a little more, because not much happened here again. It was just me trailing behind them. As you can see, they got a track limits penalty coming to lap 4, the first chicane, and the FT1's hot in my tail. They're right behind me. So I'm going to go into 4th as they serve their penalty with Mustang ahead. And unfortunately, that means I don't have anyone in front of me to draft anymore. So now I want to be at the mercy of all the higher top speed, higher acceleration cars. So as you can see there, the FT1 is closing in. Basically, the shark swelling blood moving in. And you can see the gap now is that they're on the radar and they're going to make the pass. I'm not going to really resist. I want someone in front of me to pull me along. Someone with better top speed that can just tug me along to the top 3 now. So, just going to slot in behind the FT1, and we're going to jump cut ahead again. And so you can see here that I'm keeping my distance to the FT1. I finally got this corner down. The Mustang behind me is within drafting, but as we come onto the Mulsanne Straight, you can see one of the top 3 is actually off the track with a penalty. They spun out, so that means I inherit 4th place, and now we're actually looking for a race win. It's actually pretty possible now. So as you can see, the Mustang is closing in behind me. I was concerned because that Mustang has really good top speed, but after watching the replay, I found out they were actually dealing with fuel issues, so that's why they didn't really go for the moves. Meanwhile, again, I'm bump drafting the FT1. I want to work with them. I want to tell them, hey, let's try to catch this top 2 because it's possible. I am on the racing hard, so I'm not going to be pitting at all. This race had 2 strategies, which was you could either start in the racing mediums and then pit onto the racing hard, or do a no stop on the racing hards. And pitting for the mediums wasn't worth it because the pit stop is so long. The time you gain from the mediums isn't worth it. So again, I'm just trying to minimize my time loss because I'm not going to be pitting, and I'm just bump drafting this FT1 so that way they can tow me along to the top 2. As you can see there, the entire time the Mustang actually dropped back a little despite them being in my draft and having better top speed, and they're just kind of backing off, managing their fuel, so that way they can make it to the end of the race. But again, just a bump drafting train. We're just trying to catch up to the top 3, but as you can see they're pulling away a little because the gap has actually increased to 5.4 seconds. It was about 5.2 seconds at the beginning. But really, at this point in the race, it's just trying to be close to the FT1 so that way I can bump draft them as much as possible so we can both go ahead and get up to the top 2 spots. So cutting ahead, we're going to cut to the end of lap 5, and 2nd place is in sight, but then 2nd place dives into the pit lane. So that actually explains why their pace is so much faster. You can see there the top speed, or I'm sorry, the top speed, the fastest lap time is under 4 minutes, whereas my lap times here are all above 4 minutes. So you can see that you can gain maybe 2 or 3 seconds with the mediums, but the fact that they're only, you at maximum have only 6 laps, it's not worth it. So we're going to cut ahead to the Mulsanne Straight again. As you can see here, the Mustang is really close to me, and I'm just backing off so I don't go into the back of the FT1. We're forming a nice little train here, but then on corner exit, the FT1 gets a little wheel spin and just goes straight off the track. So now I'm in 2nd. And when I was racing this at the time, I was concerned because I was wondering if this Mustang was going to work with me or not. It's lap 6, so you could continue to work together with someone, or you may start going for the actual positions now. But my answer gets solved as they go ahead and bump draft me. And again, as I later found out from the replays, that they were a little short on gas, so they weren't really going to be fighting me too much. But anyways, I'm in 2nd now, and 1st place is about 5 seconds away. So at this point, I was ready to settle for 2nd because I didn't think I could make up 5 seconds to someone who was consistently faster. But we're going to skip ahead to the end of lap 6, and to my surprise and to my delight, it turns out that first place was actually on the mediums, which again explains why they're so much faster and they were nearly 5-6 seconds ahead of me. So that actually puts me into first place on the last lap. And at this point, again, I didn't know if the Mustang would work with me or not, because at this time I didn't know that the Mustang was trying to fuel save. So I was a bit concerned looking back there, as you can see, seeing the gap. But as you can see there, I go into first very comfortably, and the former leader comes out in fourth place. And so you can see just how much time that they lost, because I was almost 6 seconds behind them when they pitted, and now I actually don't know how far away I am because of the gap, but they lost quite a bit of time in that pit stop. So you can see the Mustang closes in at the end of Mulsanne Straight, but they don't go for a move, because again, they're just trying to use my slipstream to save fuel so they can even make it to the end of the race, because in order to finish you have to cross the line, typical racing rules. But as you can see there, the gap is being pretty constant, so the driver is doing a pretty good job at maintaining a gap and a distance for their own gain. So the gap has only really deviated by maybe 200ths of a second up until this point when we get into the corners, which case it closes, but then it starts opening up again as they go slowly through the corners, probably lifting and coasting, just trying to save as much gas as possible. You don't want to run out, but getting through that complex pretty well. And at this point, knowing that the Porsche was better in the corners, I felt that I was pretty much home free, and in which case I was. So I'm just going to show these last corners just because not too much video of just driving has been shown. So going through the Porsche curves into the Corvette curves, I think. I know that not all of these curves are the Porsche curves, but yeah. But yeah, so I'm just staying on the inside, keeping it nice and tidy. Again, don't go... I'm not really aiming for the curbs. I don't want to risk going over those, because put even just a pixel of a wheel over the curb, you get a time penalty. As you can see there, the gaps in the Mustang has expanded pretty large. It's gone up greatly, and I just gotta just manage the chicanes well. And because I had time, I went over to the right-hand side of the track by the Marshall and did a little cheeky flash of my high beams to celebrate my victory. So, coming across the line, you can see I had a 2.5 second gap to second place, and the FT1 that was in front of me was 4 seconds back. And with the results confirmed, I got another solid race victory under my belt. And this being right on the heels of my previous victory at Tokyo South Inner Loop for manufacturers, I was feeling pretty good. I was pretty high on top of the world right now, because yeah, these were some pretty hard-fought victories. I mean, I was driving a cornering car on power circuits and managed to win, so it just goes to show that strategy and timing is everything. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe, like, or don't like, you know, whatever, and I'll see you in the next one.